berman mau ulit.
Oh.
Hello everyone. Everything okay?
Đúng rồi, vào thì không mình lực cảnh rồi như là con bao gồm là
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We will wait shortly for another participant. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, Audrey.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the discussion session titled Art, Women's Movement and Activism, Stories from Southeast Asia and South Korea. My name is Audrey Samantha, and I am a public program intern here in Biennale Jogja Foundation. Today, I will be your master of ceremony through the event. First, let me explain that the discussion focuses on the shared experience and different cultural contexts of women art movement and activism in both regions. What are the similar issues being shared in the past and today between women in South Korea and Southeast Asia? Is it cultural, economic, or political? How the art ecosystem had marginalized the presence of women artists? And how does the experience from each of the speakers in navigating activism and advocacy during more controlled regime? I would like to introduce our speakers for today's session. Here we have Farsha Nair and Nitaya Wiraburakul from One Manifesto, and also Kwon Kim Hyun Hyung from Republic of Korea. And we will have Alia Swastika, the director of Biennale Jogja Foundation, as our moderator. The upcoming discussion will be held in 3 different languages, Korean, English, and Bahasa Indonesia. The information and content will be translated into these languages by our interpreter. So please, for every audience, to pick those languages on the button below the main screen. We will also provide a written transcript of the discussion and it will be accessible soon. Selamat siang, selamat datang di forum diskusi publik ke-6 dengan judul Art, Women's Movement and Activism, Stories from South Korea and Southeast Asia. Saya Audrey Samantha, saya adalah salah satu intern di program publik Biennale Yogyakarta. Saya akan menjadi Master of Ceremony pada kesempatan kali ini. Ada 3 speakers kita pada kesempatan kali ini, yaitu ada Farsha Nair dan Nitaya Wiraburakul dari One Manifesto Thailand, dan juga Kwon Kim Hyun Hyung dari Korea Selatan. Diskusi kali ini akan dipandu oleh Alia Swastika, Direktur dari Biennale Jogja, dan juga diskusi ini akan diadakan dalam 3 bahasa, yaitu bahasa Korea, bahasa Inggris, dan juga bahasa Indonesia. Bisa dipilih masing-masing untuk fasilitas interpreter atau penerjemahnya ada di bawah layar utama dari Zoom yang Anda saksikan saat ini. Kami juga akan menyediakan dokumen tertulis rangkuman dari isi diskusi pada kesempatan kali ini. Without further ado, I would like to present Mrs. Alia Swastika, Director of Biennale Jogja Foundation as our moderator. Kepada Alia Swastika, dipersilahkan.
Thank you, Audrey. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining the discussion today. First, I would like to introduce the program of Bilik Korea KONNECT ASEAN. Biennale Jogja Foundation proudly announces the collaboration with the KONNECT ASEAN, ASEAN Foundation and Art Culture Program supported by ASEAN Secretariat and ASEAN Korean Cooperation Fund for this Biennale with Bilik Korea ASEAN KONNECT in the part of Biennale Jogja 2021. So the main curatorial framework for this exhibition, the exhibition will be done in October, is trying to look into the relationship between the political and historical context of a women's movement in Southeast Asia and in South Korea, since we understand that in those both regions, actually, there is the increasing awareness of gender issues and women's movement, but not many of the activists and artists and also like academics that is really connected and understand well the different situation of each region. So we will invite 7 artists from different countries, from Thailand, from Indonesia, from Cambodia, and South Korea, to discuss about the possibility and the future of women's movement and also gender issues, but at the same time also we try to look into the connected and shared history that shape also the idea and the notion of women's identity today. In this exhibition, I work with Jung-Un Lim, our co-curator. She's also present here. And for today's session, we will have, as mentioned by Audrey, we will have 3 speakers. Womanifesto, represented by Farsha Nair and Nitaya. And also we have Konkum Hyung Yong that was introduced to us by Jung-Un Lim to discuss different connections and experiences of women in South Korea, in Southeast Asia, from quite 2 different perspectives. With Konkim Hyung Yong, we will learn more about the history and the context of gender issues and women's movement in general. And then it will be followed by Farsha and Nitaya that started the Womanisto project in late 1990s and was launched in early 2000 as an artist biennales project that connect all the women artists around the region in a very interesting and for me is quite breakthrough methods of art practices. So for us, it is important also to underline the situation where today's in many places in Southeast Asia, I think we still have to fight for different issues related to gender's problem. For example, in Indonesia, we still don't have the law for the sexual violence. So one of the main and the most important issues that brought by the women's movement and feminists in Indonesia today is how to legalize this the bill towards sexual violence that we already fight since 3 or 4 years ago. So it will be very interesting for us also to learn from the experience of other speakers from Korea and India and Thailand, the situation today that faced by women artists in particular, but also women's community in general. First, I would like to introduce Farsha Nair and Nitaya from Womanifesto to have the first floor of the discussions. Yeah, hello Farsha and hello Nitaya. Yeah, it's very nice to finally see you again. I met Farsha a long time ago, maybe almost 20 years ago in a conference in Chiang Mai. Yeah? And
that's right.
I still remember very well the whole stories of how Womanifesto started, and it's very interesting for me as younger generation of female art practitioner to recreate, and also now I see how the archives being seen and being analyzed to be more useful in terms of the academic resources and also to look into the history of women's artist connection in Southeast Asia. So yeah, please, maybe before you start to talk about the manifesto itself, I would like to ask or for you to present some of more information and stories, the experience on why you started Womanifesto in the connection of how the context of art and culture scene at that time during the late 90s to early 20s. I think somehow the situation of very control regime, I think in Thailand at that time also you have like very difficult situation from the economic crisis, from the 1997 economic crisis, and how that also impacted to the system of art and how the situation marginalized women, not only artists, but also writers, practitioners, and that's how also it's encouraged you to start the Womanifesto. So maybe you can start from the stories of the context, and then after that, we can hear and see the presentation on Woman Manifesto project.
Sure.
So who will start, Basha?
Well, thank you, Alia, and thank you everyone for being here. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to share our work done with Woman Manifesto. It seems to be 1997 was quite a year, but going before that, well, not only the economic crisis, but that's when the first Woman Manifesto happened. But let's step back a bit and go to, say, 1995 was when I arrived in Thailand, not knowing anybody, and was soon introduced to Nitya. So my trajectory and my life in Thailand till I left is tied up very closely with a friendship with Nitya and with us working regularly on Woman Manifesto. So I would ask Nitya to kind of start off by giving us a little bit of a background of 1995 and the planning of the first exhibition by women who got together at an exhibition called Tradisection. This was the springboard from which Woman Manifesto emerged. So Nitya, can you
Thank you,
a little bit into 1995? Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, to let me have opportunity to be here. Yes. Before that, I met Vasha. I start to involve with the Thai women artist movement, which is will start on 94, 95. Yeah. First, I could explain that I graduate from art faculty from Chulalongkorn University in the early of 90. And then I settled myself as a freelance artist. I opened a studio, a written one, called Studio Sang, and then I organized student art classes, for living. And then at that time, I got to know Jumpon Apisuk and Jantavitha Apisuk. That time in 1995, Jumpon has started a concrete house, which is an alternative art space, which is organized by artists. What is very interesting is I was a young artist, and then looking for a space for a relationship and friendship with another woman artist or another activity artist. So then the concrete house that time is become a center of all the artists who really like in social issue, getting together and discussion. So in that time also there was a Chiang Mai social installation happened in quite the same period of in 1995. So I began to meet with at the concrete. I meet Jittima Ponsue. She's a Thai woman artist. Yeah, she's a performing artist. And then I have met Ming Nopalat. Yeah, Ming Nopalat was she had trained outside Thailand. She was graduate from Art Beaux-Arts in France. So she came with a very fresh energy. That's why we met, and then we always meeting at the concrete house. And in the same way, in the same time that Jumpon Apisuk and his wife is Jantavitha, she's organized, she having a Empower Foundation. Yeah, the Empower Foundation is to support the sex worker by offering a free education, health, and law, consulting. So this is the beginning. That how we start. And then after that, we meet with Paptavan Suwanagut. She's a mural. She's the first mural art painting. In Thailand. We are together. And then with the energy at that time, we were discussed to do an exhibition called Teddy Section. So the Teddy Section is the title is come from tradition and sexuality. So we use the word mix. And this event is marked like the first event in which women artists working together on the women issue and discrimination in Thailand. So this is the beginning. And then it's become ongoing to the international project, Women Manifesto, the first Women Manifesto after that. When I talk about the Chiang Mai social installation, that when we meet another international artist like we meet Alamayani, we meet Milofa, we meet Amanda Hing, and Kobayashi or this. That's why we began to connect and being a connection and being a network with them. And then I planned to do the next woman art movement, which is called Women Manifesto after that, with Paptavan and Ming, which is and then Vasha was coming and step in. I get to know Vasha. So I can explain a bit about the Teddy Section exhibition. This is something that very mixture. The exhibition and the work is about like installation, performance art, and then the essay, the poem, and we also produce like a book, So this is really the first time that things, the woman situation has been collected and put into something for the first time. That time we really do it without any financial support. It's a hard work, but I think this is something that is, when I think about it, this is really a real energy to do that. So when this is after that, the women movement in Thailand has become more like involved in Thai women artists and are in the international level. But for the Thai artists, Thai women artists, so every time that we are very select many like very young artists, first graduate, and mixture with the older generation, which is not much. So it's not really easy, but then in the in the middle of 90 to late of 90, I think this is still the clearly growing of the arts activity, what happened, like new art space, and which is organized by artists. And then after the Woman Manifesto, we had the young Thai artist woman group called Her Group. Wandering Moon has continued to do their work. Yeah, that is I think this is what I want to say. Yeah, and then Vasha could continue when this is Vasha step in, and then the Woman Manifesto take shape in the very international level, and we take many artists from this region, Vietnam, yeah, Japan, Singapore, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Nitya. Can you move your camera back a bit, Nitya, so we can see your face? Yeah. Okay, so can we go back to the first slide, please? The very first one. From the very beginning. Still one more. Is there still one more? Anyway, by the time they find it. Talking about, right, thank you. So this was, yes, so when I stepped in 1995, this was towards the late 1995. So dissection had already happened. Chiang Mai social installation had already happened. And I was introduced to Nitya, having been told there is a women's art event that is being planned, and maybe it's of interest to you. And immediately Nitya asked if I would be interested to co-organize with her, and I agreed, and that's how it all began. So on this slide, what you see on the left is the catalog of our first event, and on the right was this exhibition at Chulalongkorn University. It was an exhibition on Miro, and interestingly, this is when Woman Manifesto was being planned. So you have Rachada Thanapon, who used to run the Chulalongkorn Arts Center. This was at Chulalongkorn Arts Center. And then you have Nitya hiding somewhere behind, and then out there in the white. You have Mink Noparat in the center, and you have Kaptawan Suvarnakut on the right. And these were the four people who got together to organize, come up with this whole layout of the first Woman Manifesto. And interestingly, this image, which is filled with all the very famous male artists, and they inserted themselves in there, and these photos were taken. It's very telling, these photos, because it was really about claiming your space in this environment, which you know, there were no big gallery spaces or museums. The galleries were at the universities. You had Chulalongkorn, you had Silpakorn, the universities, and then you had independent, a few galleries, and then you had artist-run spaces like Concrete House. And what was happening, which I soon realized, starting 95, 96 onwards, were artists organizing projects and starting to kind of create spaces for meeting up. So in this scenario, then I ended up meeting Nitya, and then through Nitya, some of the older generation of artists, or my generation of artists now, including the younger emerging ones. And so we had Siriwan, Kanya, Achan Kanya, and you know, those kind of Sermsuk. These were the artists who were sort of showing every now and again. But there wasn't anything that was really organized as a kind of a women's movement as such. So Womanifesto really started to get organized with a lot of energy. We don't have very much visual material. We're going back to analog days where we were taking photographs, and at the first event, we would have taken some, but there's not a lot that survives. So the catalog gives a lot of information. Go to the next image now. The next, yeah. So this was the first Womanifesto, literally arrived with a bang. There was this performance presented by Tari Ito, which kind of was discussed and talked about very widely. Tari Ito from Japan had started to do this performance. She presented it in Japan, and then she was coming to Womanifesto, and it was called Self-Portrait, and this was her coming out as a lesbian performance. The kind of environment we were working in or doing this exhibition in is this little photograph on the left, very blurry photograph from Nitya's home, where we would, as you can see, lounge about. And what was really interesting about this first gathering was the energy, not just at the exhibition, but it was leading up to the exhibition. There was very little funding. We ended up staying in each other's homes. And what happened outside the time of the installing and the exhibition became very, very important. The conversations, the exchanges, the getting to know each other, the real excitement of meeting with a group of women who came from various parts of the world, and the exchange that happened, sharing our realities, where we were coming from and what we wanted to talk about. The next slide, please. So it was really about this. A decision was made to do this regularly because there was no such space that existed, no such platform that existed. And it was really important to meet regularly. And a decision was also made to be completely self-organized, to collaborate, to organize, not to be really dictated to by any funding institutions if we were going to be funded. And the most important thing was claiming that space. You know, what was common was that we all lived under this sort of patriarchal order and ordering of everything from your day-to-day lives to, you know, certainly, even though it was not as glaring, but in terms of also us as artists, you know, we instinctively knew we had to shout louder in a way to draw focus. So instead of directly going on about the patriarchy, and we thought we'd do it in a different way, we start claiming a space. And this space becomes somewhere where we present what we as women and artists would like to talk about. We imagine different ways of doing, and we challenge the usual norm. We reject or we refuse how things were. And we do it in our own way. And this was really about our autonomy. So over and above everything, it was really important as women to, not just as women, but I think as humans, to base this project on hospitality, on not based on this thing of which artist had a bigger name and who would give the event more exposure. No, it was more open, more welcoming, and anybody who wanted to come in and to share. So we decided from the very beginning that this is how we would work. And it wouldn't just be about exhibiting, because the conversations we had outside of the exhibition time were very, very important to share. And it was kind of like talking about all that happens in making art as artists, in coming together, and these conversations, the kind of invisible labor behind what you see at exhibitions. And so how do we make that visible? So from the very beginning, I think, looking back now, it really feels like we already placed Womanifesto in a sort of a liminal space from where we could leap off in any direction. If anybody had an idea, they could come up with it, and we would, if it excited us all equally, we would go with it. Next slide, please. So this is what I mean about our hanging out time, where again, our homes were the places where we could live, cook, eat together, and share a lot. This was for the second Womanifesto, which took place. By now, we did get funding from the Bangkok City Council, and 30 artists were invited for it. It was a weekend event in a park. It was supposed to be a workshop, but had to be cut back because there wasn't enough funding. So there was a weekend event in the park where the outdoor exhibition took place. And we had this gathering of all of these people who, over a period of 3-4 days, installed, and then kind of like a big opening in the park. So you see various people in that picture who then started to also organize things and reciprocate by inviting some of us from Womanifesto back. The next slide, please. So some images from the park. There were other things that happened around it. Sonia Ivecovich from Croatia had an ongoing series of work she did with women who had been abused and were escaping from abuse, were sheltering, women's shelters. And so we helped her reach a women's shelter in Bangkok, and she did this project with the masks, making masks, and each woman then told her own story about her life. And these were then installed in the bandstand in the park on each pillar. So there was that, there were performances, there were big installations. There was a lot of work which interacted with the natural elements of the park, as you see. Go Hyun-hee from Korea, an artist Nitya had met on a residency just before in Korea. And this is how our kind of connections also were explored and expanded when we met other artists at residencies or at other exhibitions, or even just from going to exhibition openings. We would invariably pick up conversations and invite them back into Womanifesto. Next, please. So one of the things I do want to stress is that Womanifesto was never curated. It was, and it still is not curated. It's always artists who introduced other artists, friends introducing friends. If people got in touch with us and said they were really interested in the project, then they would send their information in and we would end up inviting them. And so that's how we kind of worked. And it was a one-of-a-kind platform, as far as we know, in Southeast Asia, to offer this space on a regular basis anyway. We decided that we would organize every 2 years. We did not call ourselves a biennale, but essentially we were. The 2-year time frame was very much in keeping with what we could handle as artists with our own work and our own family lives and so on. So it took us a year to about work on one project. And when that was over, and then it took us another year to work on a next project. And then we thought, okay, we need that time frame to reflect on what we'd done and what we were about to do. So it was organized every 2 years. So it kind of started to become this self-expanding network. And one of our strategies to keep visible was that we would write, talk, and disseminate about ourselves. We would draw focus on ourselves. This was kind of something that we were very proactive with. Next, please. So the other projects that happened, for instance, the reciprocal projects that people from Manifesto were invited back to, meeting up with other artists over there, like Women About Women by Amanda Heng. Tari Ito organized Women Breaking Boundaries. And then there was this big exhibition, Text and Subtext, curated by Bingwei Huang Fu, which put us in touch with a lot more artists from the Asian region. Next, please. Sonia Ivecovich organized this conference in Dubrovnik, Croatia, and she invited me to come and present about Manifesto, which then brought us in touch with all these artists from the former Eastern Europe, including through one of the art historians, publishers, Katie Deepwell of N Paradoxa, getting to know about an artist from Africa, making a connection from Uganda, and then reaching out to her and asking her to tap into her network to introduce artists from the African continent, which happened at Procreation Post-Creation, the project that took place next. Next, please. So it was always, so in, being in this kind of a space where we kind of moved away from the exhibition format, we also started to decentralize and wanting to kind of move away from the usual place of showing the big cities where, of exhibiting. And it kind of like decided after the 1999 event with 30 artists, the exhaustion of it, we realized that we wanted to go back to a smaller group and have this more intimate setup and a conversation. And we thought, well, we should go on an extended picnic, which brought us to a farming community through Nitya's contact in the northeast of Thailand, very remote. And we thought, yes, we would like to set up a workshop here. We want to go into this environment to discuss this whole thing of our craft traditions and bring in these contemporary artists to come and interact with this community in this area, and the artisans, we call them artisans, who the fabric they make, the baskets they make, everything they make is for their daily use, and not sort of some gallery-based object to be exhibited, sold for a high price. And so we wanted to kind of open up these conversations. Next, please. So one of the important things about this workshop, a 10-day workshop on Bunbandan Farm, was that we implicitly said to the artists that you do not have to make work. And this was another thing which we thought, that usually you go for a residency or a workshop and you are expected to produce an end result that should be shown. And we thought, no, we don't want those constraints. We are more interested in the cross conversations that can happen between the artists themselves, between the community, the farming community, the artisans who were coming every day onto the farm, and living actually on this farm, experiencing the life of this farm. It's mostly growing rice, orchards with fruit trees, a wonderful little forest, and this creek that runs through it, which was kind of the evening spot for us to go and cool off at the end of hot, humid days to go for a swim. And this is Nitya with her feet dipped in. Next, please. So various things happened on the farm as a result of this freeing up. The conversations naturally began when we set up this central space to bring in all the people from the surrounding communities, the basket weavers, the fabric weavers, the ones who were making mats out of reeds. Suddenly there was this thing of Surojana Setabut, a ceramic artist from Thailand, actually building a mud kiln on the farm, actually processing the soil from the farm and doing a workshop to make objects, clay objects, which were then fired in the kiln. Workshops were set up with schools and university students. And one of the workshops led by Lawan Jirasuradet, a Thai filmmaker, was about making videos, making simple videos and editing them. And there were other activities. The main kind of thing was about empowering the youth. What is generally the condition is that everybody is looking towards the city as the future, to move to the city, to make a living. But here we were sort of trying to highlight the richness of their own environment, and also workshops in which children were asked to go and speak with their elders at home to find out what was growing around them, what herbs could help, what ailments, to sort of encourage this passing down of knowledge through the generations. Next, please. So at the end of the workshop was an open day where the whole community was invited for a big celebration. Now, following the 2001 workshop, Nitya was pregnant with her first child. And so it was, it just made sense to do this project called Procreation, Post-Creation, and a project very much that initially I thought that I would have to handle on my own. But then another member of Womanifesto joined in to help. This was another very important part of organizing Womanifesto. We had a very loose organization structure. It was what came to you naturally is what you did. And so whoever was free would join in to help out. Whoever could send off emails would do that. Whoever could translate from English into Thai, vice versa, would do that. And that's how we sort of worked. So Procreation, Post-Creation, by then, we were fully engaged with email, and the thinking behind it was, well, base it on the old mail projects, which were so important for people, especially living in countries that were very closed at one time, and how they created this network of sending each other things by snail mail, what we call today, but that was the only mail, and coming up with projects and ideas. So this was kind of like an email version of a mail project, and it went out as an open call. And whoever wanted to join in could. And we had an enormous feedback for it. I mean, we had a lot of people writing in, 88 works at the end of it, which were then designed on individual sheets of paper and contained in this box, which was then launched one evening with an exhibition of the contents of the box and with videos and performances. So that was Procreation, Post-Creation, for which we were very generously funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, who had opened up an office in Bangkok. And they also funded us to make a website saying it's really important for Womanifesto to have a website. So next slide, please. So it became a kind of a natural progression to go into a web-based project since we had the website up and ready. Next slide. Which was called No Man's Land. It's still up on the website and you can visit it. For this, there was Catherine Olston, an artist from Australia, who was an artist in resident via Asia Link, living in Chiang Mai, and she came in to help organize the project. Next, please. We then took the conversation back to the farm, the same farm we had been on in 2001, and where Nitya was now living. We always wanted to head back, and we thought that we should try to kind of set up a kind of permanent program, a residency program, bringing a very small group, 6 to 8 artists of different generations together, and over a longer period of time to see what could happen. So the first residency took place on which Pan Parahom, who's actually one of the owners of the farm, was one of the senior-most resident, and the youngest was 24-year-old Narumon Patsamran, a recent graduate from Bangkok University. Pan Parahom is a very, sadly, she's no more. We learned a lot from her in 2001. She had like a little shack of a studio on the farm, her little workshop, her little laboratory. She gathered things from around, seeds, bark, leaves, and she came up with dyeing all kinds of colors, natural dyes for the yarn, which she then wove into cloth, which she then actually even handmade into clothes. And she had this immense knowledge of what was growing around her and what, what she could do out of it. So again, at the residency, each artist set up a workshop for a group of students, and it included various workshops. There was a major one for weaving and dyeing, and working with Pan Parahom, and then Paptawan Suwanakud ran a workshop as well around memories. There was Lillian Zumkami, a Swiss artist, but resident in Thailand for a number of years. There was Onanong Glinsiri, who was the participant of early 1999 Womanifesto. There was Graciela Ovejero Postillo from Argentina, who was invited, and Pan Parahom and Narumon Patsamran. Both the 2001 workshop and the residency, there was no exhibition. There were other events that took place, the local music traditions of Maulam, and the oral poetry telling traditions were all explored, including going to the local sites like Khor Previhan, the Khmer temple, which the farm is very close to, and that whole area. And then this open day, the top left picture is in the farm amongst the rice, Narumon Patsamran's installation, and the school children who were part of our workshops. Next, please.
Farsha, maybe you can make it shorter a bit because we're kind of like quite late. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay, so
yeah.
We started to work on the archive in 2018. In between, we decided to take a break. This was very much to do with our own private lives, both Nitya and me, with ailing parents, growing children, and we said, okay, we pick up again and when we can, and that was 2018. Next, please. there were the archive was sorted. It is now with Asia Archive. You can all actually access the material, all the material from there. It was exhibited in Bangkok and in Sydney, along with 2 related symposia that took place. Next. Just quick views of the exhibition, what they look like, the archive exhibition. Next. So this brings us to present, where we're in process for this gatherings project. We started to plan it as a physical gathering, but then got hit by a pandemic. There is a blog for the gathering project. Please visit it. There's a lot of material. We decided that we would invite artists who've been connected with Womanifesto to host local gatherings face-to-face in this time when we are all in isolation. And then we would come together, put it on the blog, and we would start having conversations in a digital space. But the actual work would happen in an analog space. And so this is what the gathering was about, and it's still ongoing. Next, please. So these were the spots for the gatherings, the 6 different places. Next. 6 different cities. And as we were working on it, we were contacted to exhibit Womanifesto at the Gwangju Triennial. It just finished. It was an exhibition called Repetition as a Gesture Towards Deep Listening. Next, please. All of this is on the blog, so please visit it. Just a few images to show you what the exhibition looked like in Guangzhou, which, interestingly, none of us have been able to visit. Even the curator was not there because she was in Australia. But the exhibition was realized fully online, working with the museum staff and the organizers at the Guangzhou Art Academy. Next. The different views of the different locations, London, Berlin, Sydney at the far end. Next. And a main area in the center with some Womanifesto archive material, mainly albums. We've always kept albums with all our photographs, so for people to flip through actual albums and not just digital stuff. Next. So out of that, we've now come to what we call La Suemo, which is last Sunday each month. Our next gathering will be on the 28th of August, 29th. And this we've set up as a digital space, again, to meet, to discuss what we as artists are doing, what we would like to do, and to try to find ways of working together in future. Next. So it's fully via Zoom. Next. And this is a kind of planning notes coming up for this next gathering, where we would like to actually talk about how is a net made, a physical net as well as the worldwide net. And some of the things that we will be looking at, some of the projects that have already been proposed, project titled Tangible by 2 artists from Berlin, Control plus P, Journal of Contemporary Art by Judy Freya Sebagai from the Philippines. I'm on the editorial board. We plan to do certain issues. And these are the things that are up for discussion. And we always invite 1 or 2 artists to come and present their work at these gatherings. So this is where we are now. And thank you very much. I'm sorry, I've gone over time.
Yeah, thank you, Varsha, and thank you, Nitaya. Yeah, I think after a while, it's still very inspired to see all the process and the conversation happen during the Womanifesto in the last decade. Yeah, for me also, I underlined 2 very important concepts that was brought by the Womanifesto. The first one, when Varsha mentioned that it was about claiming the space. I think until now, these issues still become very important, either in the art world or outside and beyond, because most of the public space in Asia still dominated by the patriarch system. And also, even though now we have seen the presence of more women artists from the younger generation, but most of the time also we are still work within the very male dominant situation. And I think it's very interesting to look into the approach of Manifesto, where they didn't expect artists to always create works, but it's really about experience and also the process of gaining the knowledge of production knowledge together. I think it's something that still, for me personally, it's very inspiring. And in a way, the conversation brought by the artists and the encounters with the community, where they come to the farming and also talking to a woman who lives in the farm, giving us the opportunity to see the contemporary art practice in a very different way. And it is also about questioning and critically redefining what is the meaning of contemporary art. What is the position of craft? What is the positions of women's objects in our everyday art practice making? So thank you very much. For the next one, we will listen to Ms. Kwon Kim Hyung Yong from Seoul, in Seoul, right, in Korea. And it will be a bit different from Farsha and Nitaya's perspective. We're very much based on art, and because
지점은 좀 다르게 하는 거예요.
sebentar.
네, 잠깐만요.
보조래. So we will need to be translated. So yeah, sorry. Kwon Kim will be speaking about the history of women's movement in Korea in general, and what is the situation today. And I think later on we have also joined in here.
한국에서는 여성 운동은 어떤 상황인지 좀 설명하도록 하겠습니다. 네, 지금 희연 씨가 시작할 수 있습니다.
So please, for Kwon Kim,
Hi everyone.
the floor is yours.
Yes, the floor is yours. 네, 지금 시작할 수 있습니다. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kwon Kim Hyun-young. Thank you for recommending me to present in the Vietnam. My presentation today is not about women in art spaces, but more about the women's movement in Korea. Can you please show the first page of the presentation? Mas boleh yang slide pertama? So I'm just gonna start right now. So I prepared a presentation about the online-based feminist movement in Korea. So the first thing I will talk about is the start of the online-based feminist movement in Korea from the late 1980s to the early 2000s. Okay, please move to the next slide. Yes, so the start of the feminist movement is from the mid to late 90s when pieces became readily available and high-speed internet was installed across the nation. Boleh ke slide selanjutnya, Mas? So one of the most distinctive features of the feminism at the time was that they have communities, and each community has at least 500 to at least at most 1,200 active members. So at the time, there are three main PC companies, and each company's largest female communities are all very feminist centered. That is the situation in the 1990s. Kalau bisa slide selanjutnya, if we see in the next slide. In the 2000s, there's a change in how the users use the internet, and in that we see how there's different forms of communities too. So these are you can also see this as the three most representative forms of the feminist communities online. So the first one is the feminist webzine called Moon and Daughter Cell. It was founded in 1998. So at the time, what was percent as a feminist voice is very different than what it is now. Yeah, so it's not seen as a female-centric magazine, a feminist magazine, but more a female-centric magazine. So the second form of the feminist community is from the forum called Anime that was run from the 2000s until 2015. So at the time, what they wanted to accomplish is to create an all-inclusive feminist community that doesn't like look at how you look or your financial situation and such. So the third form of feminist community is a channel called Hilda. It's a website that is run from 2003 until now. So the goal of creating Hilda was to side with females and also minorities or marginalized identities. So the I think most representative characteristic of the three forums is that they did not look at, they did not voice out females and like females only, but tried to seek out what exactly are females. We can move on to the next slide. Boleh ke slide selanjutnya, Mas? Okay. So if we look at how the the feminist movement was in the 1990s and 2000s, these are the 3 points that I have summarized.
Andin bicaranya agak pelan-pelan ya, Andin.
Iya. Nih, ke Tashihamin ini. So the key issues that I can find in that era was that there was a lot of online sexual violence and cyber stalking happening. And this is all the online-based sexual crimes that was happening at the time, and it has become a culture of its own. And so how do we deal with that and how this was dealt with at the time? We try to deal with it by getting together and trying to form a connection and relation between females or women and minority identities. And in female spaces, we try to imagine and try to see how this feminist movement can become its own social movement. So at the time, we talked about how we can maybe made our own camp or maybe made movies about this together as a community. So what was the result of this? You can see the next slide. We can see that the issues that have arisen in the 2000s have followed through to the mid 2000s and has formed its own kind of problems that has slowly grew in size and have more things added to it. And at the time, as more IT companies grow, there's a lot more regulations applied to these community spaces. However, through financial difficulties and change in media landscape, in 2008, eventually there is a ruling by the conservative government to eliminate all policies on internet regulation, which led to increasing misogyny on the internet. So this point can be seen throughout the era of mid 2000s until late 2010s. So the second thing I want to talk about is how online-based feminism in 2015 and onwards, and how feminism has trended into search engines.
Andin bicaranya terlalu cepat.
So there's this phenomenon where the word feminism trended on the most searched keywords in web search engines. Ini bisa lanjut ke slide selanjutnya. To the next slide, please. On the 20th of January in 2015, the words feminist and hatred was trending on the web search engines. So as you see on the right side, there is a screen capture of the news report at the time, and it has said that a 17-year-old by the name of Kim volunteered to join ISIS in Syria because he hated feminists. Since there wasn't a lot of reporting or progress in the feminist or interest in feminism at the time until 2015, this news report came as such a shock to the nation. At the time, not a lot of people knew what feminism was, and that's why they searched online. And they were shocked to know that there's someone who hated feminists so much that they risked their lives running to the border to Syria just to join ISIS. And this is one of the examples how intense or how dangerous the misogynist culture on the internet could be. And since people don't really know what feminist is, it's really odd that they can hate it so much. So yes, in February of 2015, as a response to this, females have started the I am a feminist hashtag movement. Yes, we can move to the next page. So for the 2 years from 2015 to 2017, this hashtag movement became such a prominent form of protest on the internet. So this hashtag movement is a form of protest where they put in what they believe in or their principles into a hashtag and then trend it online in social networking sites. So the start of this protest is the I am feminist movement, but after that, there's been more hashtags such as there's a lot of women here and such like that. one other example of the campaigns is that women started using hashtags such as "I am a woman that can be pregnant" to response as a response to the government putting out numbers as to how many women in Korea actually get pregnant and boiling it down just to the numbers. If you can see on the right picture, it is a screen capture of one of the outspoken accounts on this movement. So as you can see, this account on the right aims to take jabs at the website Soranet, and Soranet is one of Korea's largest pornographic sites that share illegal filmed porn and child pornography as well. And at the time in 2017, the government still hasn't put in all the effort to take down websites such as Soranet. So this account aims to share the Soranet website link every day through Twitter. And there's 380,000 people following this account. So even the government instances and people in positions of power who are in charge of taking down Soranet also follow this account. So this account aims to take jabs at people and ask them, "Are you following Soranet?" So that it became a campaign of its own. So a lot of these government institutions that followed the Soranet account felt called out and canceled through Twitter. So they decided to unfollow and then issue an apology. So this is one of the more successful attempts at taking down Soranet. If we can move on to the next page. So in May of 2015, one of the biggest players in inducting the current state of misogyny online, Megalia, was founded. So Megalia's name came from the combination of the word MERS, as in MERS, the virus, and Galia, which is a novel made in Sweden that talks about feminist ideas. Megalia's site disappeared in just 3 months after suffering from internal differences and external attacks. So on the right, you can see a picture of the hand gesture, and this hand gesture is viewed as feminists saying that men has a small reproductive organ. So this gesture can be seen as half joke and maybe actual hatred on one side. But to be fair, Megalia disappeared just after 3 months, though its impact can still be felt now, as the word Megalia is used often in witch hunts against feminists. And this hand gesture, even until now, cannot be used in any public sense or public campaigns, as it's seen as a hatred gesture. If males online, or at least males who are mostly referred to as incels, see this hand gesture used in campaigns or in public spaces, they will instantly report it as a hatred gesture and get that campaign taken down. You can now move to the next page. So one of the key issues of the 2015s for feminism is that the issue of illegal filming became such a big issue, as well as digital sex crimes. And one of the key aspects or movement of the feminist movement at that time is that moving away from previous principles in which we accept all women and minor identities, at this time, there's a movement where we only view, the movement only claims to protect women and biologically female women only. Compared to the previous movement, this movement has been more well received by the public. So the key point difference that has become very important for the public is that before, the movement embraces not only women but also minor identities, and now, as it's only for women, it's a lot more well received. And you can see here the cultural rules for how this can happen. The first thing is how the sexual law can be improved. The laws for sexual crimes can be improved. And the second is how there is a rise in influence that the male communities have online. The third is the rise and use of social network that has become the key point of this anonymous community. And the fourth is how the general female public has started actively using the word feminism. The difference before with before and now is that they're trying to highlight the difference between females and feminists. So before they try to make a difference between females and feminists, But now females naturally refer to themselves and consider themselves feminists. We can move to the next page. Now we will talk about the current state and the future of the female movement. Within the next page, please. So in the mainstreaming of feminism, we have to talk about the new phase of populism and its negative effects or negative light. So what I've observed about the Korean society right now is that it's in the verge of breaking down. And in this situation, any kind of social movement that emerges tends to alienate the people with minor identities and others from the movement. In this situation where you're not really sure where the future is going, and then you're experiencing a lot of negative situations, the hate politics can rise easily and get to people as easy. And in here you can see how this harms the feminist movement and females in general. And here you can see that feminist movement has adopted views such as we should just share the pie between us females and othering other identities as not part of the movement. And in this case, we can see that feminists have tried to prioritize security as a reason to normalize hate and discrimination against others. So what we can see here is that after 2015, there's a lot of people representing this feminist movement who are actually hating against refugees, against LGBT identities, and also against immigrants. We can move on to the next page. One of their strategies to prioritize safety is that they only let biologically female or cis females participate in their protests. In this case, you can see that this radical feminist take on the feminist movement and is a new community that has emerged recently. This new community, when organizing protests against illegal filming, they decided to put out a law or a rule in which only biologically female or cis females can participate. And to become a staff member of this protest, people had to pass a triple physical examination, like recording their voice, taking a picture of their wrists, and sending in a picture of their ID cards. And on the day of the event, police were asked to block male protesters exclusively. We can move on to the next page. And this protest is one of the most successful protests on female issues done to date. And we can see that the successes could be attributed to that rule to exclude any males. As you can see, this might have resulted. As you can see, this might have resulted in a successful protest, but this rule has also led to a lot of hate, pointed at transgenders in general. So at the time, the protest was held in Dewa Station, and a lot of transgenders who were looking to participate were instantly hit by a lot of hate and a lot of violence as they exited the station. As you can see on the left side, this is a quote from one of the protesters who participated that day on the protest called Lihan. She said, end quote, they created a policy to exclude cis male protesters, but the reality is that the target of hatred illustrated in comics and magazines are transgender women. On the day of the protest, there were an incident where the staff protested against police trying to crack down on decorset women or women protesters who are sporting masculine clothes and short haircuts. In reality, the kind of crackdowns did not exist at all. So, in conclusion, this can just be seen as hatred against transgender women in general. We can move on to the next page.
Andin, sambil boleh mengingatkan mungkin waktunya.
Iya. 그 시간 경과는 좀 있어서 빨리 진행해 주시면 됩니다. And after that, we can see that there is a change in the public's reaction to feminism, and it has gained a lot of sympathy from the public. And in that case, that it's been well received by the public, it has also been in the acceptance of transgender women, and also how they've moved towards a more conservative approach. So we can see that actually the feminist movement in Korea now is in such a dire situation and dire state that it cannot really be seen as a good thing. This hatred against feminism, due to the things happening before, has extended to more hatred put against feminists. And one of the examples is that recently there has been an attack on a gold medalist athlete who won at the Olympics just because they sported a short haircut. We can move on to the next page. So to overcome the state of feminism, we've decided to open up a space where we can organize protests and also discuss about the state of feminism. So there are two main issues that needs to be overcome in online-based feminism today. How to overcome the discrimination, hatred feminists has done to minorities, and how we can solve the issues of how the outside factors are affecting the feminist movement. And this are the tasks or issues that needs to be solved by the current feminist movement. That's it for my presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Kwon Kim. I think it's, in the beginning it was quite, sorry. Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you very much for Ms. Kwon Kim for the presentation, even though we have some of delays and difficulties for the translation, but I think what you have mentioned gave us very interesting insight on what is happening now for the feminist movement in South Korea. I think I follow also the internet things with the gold medalist from South Korea, and somehow it gives me also like an expose on how being feminist is not something easy in South Korea. I think when Miss Kwon Kim mentioned about the strategy and how we should choose the visual and also the verbal language in terms of the demonstration or campaign the feminist movement, we can also compare to what happened in Indonesia during 1998. So in Indonesia in 1998, we had quite big political change, the political shifts that also encourage the women's movement and organizations to be part of the civil and political movement. So at that time, the feminist organization, they choose very popular symbol or very popular issue that also gave and created the sympathy for the people for their movement. So instead of talking about the women's issue themselves, they extend the issue into the motherhood. So the first problem that they targeted was the increasing price of the milk for the babies. And this strategy somehow proved successfully because then they become quite popular, and they show the empathy and the solidarity of the women's movement to the issues of everyday life of the people. So instead of talking about feminism at that time, they choose also, or they choose the strategy towards like the practice of everyday life people, like the motherhood and the problem of the price for baby's food and child food. And this increasing the trust of public to feminism. So but nowadays I think it's quite different, because we see also in Indonesia lots of situations in internet as well that showing the misogynistic approach and misogynistic attitude from the netizen. And I think Farah, one of our interpreters, she did a project about this. So if we go back to the presentation of Woman Manifesto from Farsha and Nitaya, and to compare to what happened in South Korea, I think it's quite interesting for us in the next discussion, or if you have organize another forum, to think about this idea of space. I think Nitaya and Farsha in the beginning, they mentioned about the physical space, how to reclaim the space from the very patriarch art system, and to give more opportunities and space for women artists and women art practitioners to share and experience together. While in the case of South Korea, the space now transformed to the virtual space, which is they have very different character and very different impact on how we connect each other. I think also nowadays with the pandemic situation, from the last exhibition, Farsa mentioned that the Woman Manifesto gathering in the end happened in 6 different cities. I think that's also part of the benefit of technology. But at the same time, the technology, they have their own consequences. And like the open and anonymous situation can create something that, for example, happening in Korea, where the hatred towards feminism was spread out in the internet world. I tried to find some comments and questions. There is one request from one of the participants. Is about Woman Manifesto. Is it a membership? Is it possible for people from outside, like the initiator of Woman Manifesto, to be part of Woman Manifesto today? How do you define Woman Manifesto as movement and organization today? This is from Momo.
It's we've never seen ourselves as an organization where we take in members or anybody applies to be like a membership, like any formal joining forms or fees or anything like that. Basically, as I said, we very much work with the people introducing us, or people artists introducing other artists, or directly connecting with us. So, in fact, I replied to Momo in the chat to say that she can write into us. I presume it's a she, but it doesn't matter. They can write into us, and yes, and we take it from there. If we are planning any particular project as such, then we would usually just look around, and we would see which artists we know, and or works we might have come across of certain artists, and we would try to find them and approach them. So currently, as we are not really planning a particular project, but the main thing is this La Suemo, these gatherings we are doing every last Sunday of the month. We are actually opening up to conversations, to have to meet in this digital space and to find analog ways of doing. And so here we would welcome people. Like I was part of a talk with 2-3 ladies, one from Lagos and 2 from South Africa. And now we invite some of them into a La Suemo gathering. So, that way we see this circle growing. of people we add, and it's a place to meet. So this is our current reality, to think in this space, you know.
And maybe you can compare the situation mentioned by Ms. Kwon Kim, like when in Korea now it's quite difficult when a woman declare themselves as feminists, and also they use the internet as public space, and it's quite hard because the people, the community responds very hard to them. So maybe you can also share the situation in the late 90s or 20s, and how is it now being a feminist artist in the community, like in Thailand or in India now?
I think being a feminist artist, I don't see any kind of, how shall we say, reaction from the art world specifically. I mean, it's open, it's, you know, accepting. But in another sense, because, you know, the digital platforms, the social media, if you see any kind of discussion from some of the feminists that I know who are activists, who are very involved as journalists or in writing about politics, you know, the kind of hate you see, the language that is, it's very violent, and it seems to be much more, if the same thing said by a man probably would not garner so much violent comments, but it seems to be really over the top when women are concerned, or transsexuals, or, you know, anybody who is not classified as male is concerned. So certainly the digital platforms, the social media spaces are very fraught with this. And yes, and then very often comments directly related to addressing you as the feminist who deserves to be taught a lesson, you know. So you see that a misogyny, I think, around the world, actually, and it, you know, it was always there. Perhaps it was just under the surface, but what has happened now with social platforms and the digital media, as you say, you can remain anonymous and you can say a lot of things, and so it's spewing out. And I've seen that in a certain sense when looking at certain sites related to the political issues in Thailand as well, where you know, the for and the anti. And if you were to say something about the situation and the say the monarchists didn't agree, or the, you know, the pro-government people didn't agree, then it gets very violent verbally, promising to do violence in actuality, you know, that kind of situation. So I think it relates, maybe from what I could gather from Ms. Kwon Kim's talk, the translation was really not very clear, but clearly there is a very pointed movement, right, to address some of these issues of gender violence and pornography, illegal pornography, right? And they seem to be very much more organized as groups fighting against this. Maybe there are artist groups as well, if I understand right. And so they seem to be much more geared towards that. Here there are individual artists who are working on some of these issues, but not as I have yet to come across groups I mean, there are on Instagram, there are groups, or somebody has set up like a podcast, you know, which has feminist content, and it's definitely a feminist expression. So yeah, that's my kind of feeling.
Nitaya, do you want to add how, like, your experience when you started kind of like feminist project, and how is it going now with the younger generation of female artists in Thailand? I think now the screen is a bit very blurred, not only a bit, yeah.
Yeah, as my experience, when at that time when we do the movement like that, yeah, that is many people are pointing that we are like a feminist movement. In the same time that I really said that this is not exactly what you can call a feminist, but this is like a feminine opportunity, which is what we can speak, what we can think, and what we can do, you know. So in the young generation right now, the movement is much more better. I think it's because of also the many knowledge from the media in the cyber. And in Thailand right now, the situation that even you want to speak about the feminists in the cyberspace or in the world, people you can accept. The internet now, you cannot speak about the political. This is even man and woman. Yeah. So this is what I understand. Is your question? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you. Maybe one last question to Ms. Kwon Kim. Like, if you see the presentation from Farsha and Nitaya, and how the artists claim the space, like the physical space, to be the safe space for women to have conversation, how do you see this collaboration in South Korea between women's activists and the artists? Are the women artists, they are part of the movement in South Korea? And how do you see that art spaces or art practice can be the beneficial aspect for women's movement?
This is for my question.
For Kim.
조금 더 믿을 수 있는 것 같아요. 이런 문제를 냈습니다. 죄송합니다. 그 소리를 안 들려요. 혹시 한국 채널이?
네, 들려요. 네.
네. 아직 masih nggak kedengeran. 죄송한데 아직 안 들은 거예요. 혹시 어떤 채널에서 있어요? Oh.
Saya. Gimana Andi?
Maaf Mbak, masih tidak kedengaran. Kalau boleh tahu di channel mana ya Mbak?
Siapa? Dia?
네. 들려요. 네네, 들려요. 지금 들려요. 네. 서울 들리는 Mbak ya. 네, 문제 좀 답장해 주시면 됩니다. If you can see the Korean movement and the feminist movement in Korea is very small in scale and is focused on a very small issue. And within the movement itself, there's a lot of differing opinions, and people will have their own insights about what the movement could be. And in case you can see this hatred towards feminists, actually a lot of the times are catered or at least are pointed at this young female feminists. So the males in their teens and 20s actually just cannot stand women around their same age who are feminists. So in that sense, I think this could be beneficial, or at least a point that could be adapted. And this is one of the ways that males, known as incels, are attacking females. So my take on this is that women artists in Korea can definitely benefit from creating artworks such that can be found in Thailand and in Manifesto. I think the key point that I want to share or want people to take away from this is how the monolithic, the monogenic thing that happened in feminist movement has led to a lot of people being anti-feminists. So my opinion is that I think there needs to be more conversations about how this process came to be and how we as a whole can benefit or at least can respond to it.
Yeah. Thank you, Miss Kwon Kim. Thank you, Farsha, and thank you, Nitaya, as well. I think it's quite pity that we don't have really enough time for more conversation. But I think from the two experience, what happened in Thailand in the art world during the late 90s to early 20s until mid 20s, and to hear also from Ms. Kwon Kim about what is happening in the women's movement in South Korea during the early 2000s, I think quite interesting to compare how what so-called as space become very important. And I think still until now, we still need to expand the networks and collaborations between all the people who have the concerns of women's issue, not only women's issue, also now we have the non-binary positions also that we are being marginalized. So I think this is also just a starting point for more conversation. As I mentioned before, I just realized that even me, many times I visited Korea, but it's very rare that I have the opportunities, for example, to do more research about women's movement in Korea, or how the art world somehow contributed to the campaign of gender's equality there. And also, I also visit Thailand quite often, but most of the time we are living in the bubble of the art world and not really have the opportunities to go beyond the scene. So I think this kind of conversation really bring up the entry point for every one of us to have more collaboration with people from different disciplines and different cultural contexts, and also to think about the use of technology, particularly during the pandemic situation where internet really connect everyone's around the world. And even though we have difficulties, for example, now with the languages and everything, but I think it's still very useful for us to be connected together in this virtual time and space. So I think I don't really have a summary or conclusion from the discussion, but I'm very happy to hear from everyone here. Thank you, Farsha. Thank you, Nitaya. I hope that I can join more conversation of Womanifesto. And also I was thinking maybe we can adopt some part of your methods to be applied in Indonesia. I think still very interesting methods to have all the artists and practitioners to have picnic together. It's kind of like a moving residency, adventural residency, which is very interesting. And also thank you very much for Miss Kwon Kim for the time and the opportunity to hear about the situation now in Korea regarding to the women's movement. Actually, Ms. Kwon Kim already sent us the text and has been translated by Andin to English and to Indonesia. So it will be sent also to all participants, so we have more clear idea of the situation that she illustrated before. So we will need like some time to edit. So maybe it will be ready next week, either in our website or will be mailed to the participants. Thank you very much for everyone who supported this discussion. Our two interpreters, Andin and Farah, thank you very much. I know it has been challenges also for us to try with the new technology. Thank you for Komunitas Sakatoya who helped us to set up the technical things of the discussion. And of course, thank you for our supporters, ASEAN Foundation, ASEAN Connect, and Asia Korean Cooperation Fund. I will give the floors back to Audrey. Please, Audrey. Sambil ngingetin link mungkin ya.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much to all of our speakers, moderators, and also participants. I would like to remind everyone kindly to please fill out the survey. Tolong survei yang sudah diletakkan di bagian chat diisi. Yeah, please fill out the survey, the one that we sent it earlier. And also, before we end our session, I would like to remind everyone here to come and join us at Sesi Viral, Representation and Othering. So this event will be held in August 26 and attended by Cosmin Kostinas, Daud Tanudirjo, and also Mele Yamomo. We will discuss a lot more about arts and also culture there. So, okay, before we end our meeting, I would like everyone to turn on their camera and let's take a picture together, okay? So we will take a picture together. So make sure to show us your face and your best pose, okay? I will wait for everyone to be ready. Yeah. Please present your best smile, everyone. We will have we will have a photo session together. Okay, I will count down for the operator to take the picture together, okay? Maybe Mas tolong di display yang satu room itu spotlightnya untuk foto bersamanya. Okay, we will take photos together. I will count down, so please, operators, be ready. Okay, display your best smile, everyone. Look at your camera, and okay, we will count down 3, 2, 1. Okay, one more time, please. Okay, you can strike any pose you're confident with. Come on. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you everyone for having us here at Biennale Jogja Foundation, and of course for this session. So I would like to thank everyone, every speakers, moderators, Mrs. Alia Swastika, and also thank you for every participants for their time. I hope everyone stay healthy and happy, and see you in the next meeting. Bye. Have a nice weekend, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.